Okay. Can anyone recall? Look at your section 361 and tell me what are the ingredients of that offense of kidnapping. Hello? Can someone tell? Ayush?
Uh, Ma'am, there are basically five
Everybody
elements.
should know that Ayush is not even from our section. And he's the one who's participating more regularly, who is coming prepared with the class, with the cases. Why the class is not preparing?
Can I?
So let Ayush begin. You can
Ma'am, we
also.
are prepared. May I?
हाँ तो बोल किसने रहे हैं इतनी देर से पूछ रही हूँ सब चुप
Can I
बैठे हैं.
understand?
No, let Ayush begin now. Ayush begin.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the first element is whoever. This means that any person who commits the act is included in this. The second element
Who are
would
the
be
persons
takes,
excluded? Who are the persons excluded from here? Whoever.
ma'am, except for the lawful guardian. I think nobody would be excluded from
No,
this.
no, 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 no. Whoever. Remember your exception from
The
general
exceptions
exceptions.
that we have studied.
Whoever means
Yes,
whoever
ma'am.
is not below the age of 7 years, who is not
Oh,
suffering from an unsoundness of mind that's inbuilt. But these are something we
yes,
have
ma'am.
to learn that whenever we say whoever, it is actually not meaning everybody. It is subject to the general exceptions
General
created there.
exceptions.
Yeah, so that's right. Whoever means actually everybody, excepting those who have been specifically accepted from criminal liability. Okay, whoever. So there's a human being
Uh,
required.
yes, ma'am.
Mm.
Takes or entices. So there are two particular actions that are supposed to be considered. They should either
Mhm.
take the person or entice them through their actions or say verbal communications,
Promises, etc.
promises. Yes, ma'am. Thirdly, ma'am, it includes all minors under the age of 18 because of the Section 89 of the Juvenile Justice Act and persons of unsound mind.
Mhm.
And then the fourth clause would be the keeping of the lawful guardian. So the guardianship should be lawfully entrusted with the person from whom the person has been taken from their lawful keeping. And the fifth would be without the consent of this lawful guardian.
No, first of all, out of that two component there. So the
Oh, yeah.
child should be in the keeping, and then the action of taking or enticing should result into taking out of
Out.
the of such keeping. So there are two components there.
Understood, ma'am.
Mhm.
And finally, without the consent of the lawful guardian.
Right. So and lawful guardian means
Ma'am, it includes any person who's been lawfully entrusted with the care or custody of such a minor or person.
with the
So,
care or custody, one of the two,
yes.
either of the two can be there. So now, what is the issue which Vardharajan raises? What is the critical issue in Vardharajan?
Ma'am, in Vardharajan, it is stated, may I answer, ma'am?
Let's let Jitendra answer.
Yeah.
Jitendra or
Yes,
Rahul?
ma'am.
Yeah, Jitendra.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. What was the question? Sorry.
What is the critical issue in the context of these ingredients? Which is the issue which is critical in Vardharajan's case?
Ma'am, the issue in this case, whether the accused had taken the girl from the lawful guardian within the meaning of Section 361, I think. Like,
I would say there
is
are
the
two
issue.
critical issues. The two critical
Ma'am,
issues.
is the accused had taken her out of the lawful guardianship of her parents or not? It is the issue, I think, in this case. the case.
Yeah, that's one. But I think there are two critical
Or
issues.
whether he persuaded,
Is there any
her
active
in
part
any manner.
played by him?
No, I think there are two critical issues for us to discuss. One is, of course, this whether the action of the accused amounted to either taking or enticing. That's one question. The second one is that if the minor is on the verge of majority, then in that case, whether that person's consent is of any consequence. Because what has happened in this case is the girl who was seen to be as the victim was 17 years or 17 years, 10 months old. And she had done certain things. And certain thing means she left home, went with the boyfriend, got herself registered for marriage. And after a few days, the family complained and they were brought back. The boy is charged with kidnapping. So the judges certainly have, in these circumstances, so the detailed facts are important in this case because that only gives us an insight into the focus is on the interpretation of the two words, takes or entices. But the judges have actually also focused on the fact that she was on the verge of majority. So therefore, I say there are two things that we will talk about this case. One is that whether the circumstances suggested there was any taking or enticing. So what are the circumstances in which this case has arisen? What are the facts of the case, Rahul?
Ma'am,
Rahul, what are the facts
the
of the case?
general facts are the girl was at the verge of attaining majority, ma'am. So she voluntarily left her father's house and arranged to meet the accused at a certain place. She is the one who arranged, and she left voluntarily at a certain place and went to the sub-registrar's office, ma'am, where the accused and the girl registered on an agreement to marry. So there was.
Do you think
in this
it's
case,
relevant? Is it relevant to mention that she was having an affair with a neighbor? Her sister reported the fact to the father, and the father sent her to a relative's place. From the
relatives'
relative's
place, yes. So
place,
after
she
that,
called up. She called up. She called up
she
the
called the
boyfriend.
accused
Then what
and
happened? Because I think that is step by step. If we know what happened, we can have a critical understanding of this case. So she called up, settled a place where they will meet. She went to that place herself. Then what was the accused actions then?
He take her
then
into a
he accompanied with the intentions of the girl, ma'am. Then
No,
they
no,
went to Mylapore and Giddy, some
accused
other
came in a
places.
car,
They bought some Mangalyam.
and the accused came in a car with a friend. From there, they straight away went to the jeweler shop. There they bought
Jeweler
some
shop.
Mangalyam that you was mentioning. From there, they went to the
Yes, ma'am.
registrar, registrar of
Sub-registrar's
marriages,
office.
sub-registrar's office. They went and registered themselves to get married. So
Yes, ma'am.
because that's not a lot of students think that they got married there. They did not get married. They just registered themselves their intent to marry. Then they went to a hotel, stayed there for 7-8 days, at which point they were found by the police and brought back. Are these the facts or something else you want to mention? So on these facts, the question is, yeah, yes, out?
They stayed 10 to 12 days.
Yeah.
Then after that only they found in Coimbatore at the place where they were, the investigation officer and the parents find that.
Right.
So nearly 10 to 12 days they stayed together.
Okay. So on these facts, the question is whether the ingredients of 361 are fulfilled. And the only question what is not denied is that yes, there was no consent of the parents. It's also true that she was a minor. What is also true that she was under the lawful keeping. Was she under the lawful keeping of her guardian?
Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
Because
she was under the lawful guardian.
Because the relative also were acquiring their lawful guardianship from the father. So the child, merely because she was a relative's place, does not mean she was not in the lawful keeping. So the act of she leaving the house, she fixing the place for meeting, then the boyfriend fulfilling her wishes of registering marriage, staying with her, etc., whether all those acts amounted to taking or enticing. So that's the only question in this case. So what did the judge say? What has the court said in this case? Was there kidnapping or no kidnapping? And you know, the court said no, there was no kidnapping. But why did the court say there was no
the-
kidnapping?
There is no active part on the side of the man, ma'am. So the girl left with her own willingness only. So if he want, there can be a case, if she left the own willingness, her own willingness, there can be a case where the active solitizement of the accused in the earlier times, that can be amount to kidnapping. But in this case, there is no active part. She left willingness, and there is no any action of the accused in the earlier part of time, which is the to left the house is the furtherance of that act. So there is no case like that. So she left her in own willingness, and the accused also not solitized in earlier times. So this is full of her willingness only, her act
So
only, though no active part.
do we agree with the judgment? Do we think that
Ma'am,
the judge have given a right judgment in this one, saying there was no kidnapping because he did not take her away? And also gave a finding saying that there was nothing earlier in terms of saying he had enticed her. But are there any statement on enticement in the judgment? The whole judgment has been decided by reference to taking, or is there some discussion on enticing?
Ma'am, so the judge has laid down a test that to determine incitement. Uh, we can also see that even if not before the act immediately, even if we can trace back something in the distant past where some action of the accused may have lured the person, the victim, into coming with them, even then it can be established that it was taking away from lawful guardianship. But in this case, we cannot find any instance where the accused did anything or said anything or promised anything which would have sort of implanted this idea in the mind of the victim that they can go out of the keeping of their lawful guardian with this person.
Okay, now let's read the facts once again. The paragraph says on the next day, October 1st, 1960, Savitri left the house of Natarajan at about 10, telephoned the appellant asking him to meet her on a certain road in that area, and then went to that road itself. By the time she got there, the appellant had arrived there in his car. He got into the car, and both of them went to the house of one Sami with a view to take that person along with them to the registrar's office to witness their marriage. After picking up Sami, they went to the shop of Govindarajulu, and the appellant purchased 2 gundus, which were selected by Savitri, and then proceeded to the registrar's office. Do you think all this decision making of getting a friend, go to the purchase to the shop, purchasing of the gundus, going to the registrar's office, could have happened on that spur of the moment?
No, ma'am. Ma'am, it was already decided by the accused that
So
they'll be
then there's
marrying
no
each other.
discussion about that. There's no discussion about it. But the conduct of the accused in this case is categorically saying, and what the information is saying, that she asked him to come and meet her on the road at some place. She goes there. From there, do you think that when she got into the car, all the conversation about marriage, preparation, blah, 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 all that happened at that point of time only? There was no prior conversation on this issue of marrying? So this
And
is
prior
something
to
which
that,
the
there was
judges
no.
have not focused at all on. This part of the whole detail which have been given in the facts is not something which we find in the judgment being talked about. So they are saying, oh, we do not, they have not, they are kind of not given us any details of what was happening before her sister discovered the affair and told the father. So she was friendly. She used to talk over with this friend on the neighbor on the side. That's about it. What the conversation was, we do not know. So is it an omission on the part of the prosecution not to have insisted on that aspect, or the prosecution who did not focus on this part of the facts, that look, all this conduct is showing prior meeting of mind. He already had the money in his pocket to go and no, he had come prepared. He has not gone home to get money. And 1960 was not the time when you had the credit cards. So you had to have the cash for you to buy whatever you bought. And then to be prepared with all the papers. The registration of marriage requires you to fill up certain forms. So everything was already there. But these are not the aspects about which you find any conversation in the judgment. The whole conversation is whether the fact that she left her on her own, she did know, she took the initiative, and therefore what this man did was allow her to accompany him. That's how the judges have interpreted the facts. So taking mean that there has to be some active action by the accused person. In this case, he is only allowing a minor to accompany him. That does not amount to taking. And if there's no taking, then certainly there can be no kidnapping. But there was no enticing, and this fact did not suggest a prior promise of marriage. Is something which the judges have omitted. So one has to also analyze what are the possible reasons because of which the judge did not talk about it. Then, in addition, what the judges have also said is that, because even if suppose a child of 13 leaves herself on her own, leaves the house and does everything exactly as this woman has done, do you think judges would have given the same judgment if it was a girl of 18, 13, 12, 15?
No, ma'am.
So she's on the verge. So judges are still saying that no, because she was on the verge of majority, she was studying in a college, she was in the second year. Therefore, she was capable of taking a decision. And therefore, her taking, so they say that whether the question that whether children are capable of leaving their parents or not, we will not decide that question. So judges very easily say that we will not look into this, but we'll say that, okay, this girl is capable of taking decisions. She took a decision. And after 2 months, if she had taken a decision, nothing would have happened. So therefore, even though in statutory categories, this leeway is not there for the judges, but the judges have exercised that discretion. And when you compare that to our POCSO cases, for example, in POCSO cases, if the girl is 17 years and 10 years old, 10 months old, and she gives consent to the sex, the man will still go to prison under minimum 7 years of imprisonment. Her consent will not be considered as relevant. Her fact that she was a college-going student, she was in a city, all that will not matter with the judges. But in this case, in 1960, the judges did create that understanding that criminalizing consensual activities when children are on the verge of majority should not be dealt with in the same manner. So then it also opens up a Pandora box. So suppose the girl was not a college-going student, same year, same 17 plus 10 months, but she has never been out of her village. Do you think the judges would have come to the same conclusion? Or suppose Vardarajan took her, then after 5 days in the hotel, spending time with her and having sex with her, abandoned her after 5 days. Would the judges have said, no, there was no kidnapping? These are all moot points. In this particular case, we got to hear about the real actors involved in this case. The boy in this case was a son of the Inspector General of Police of the area. Very respectable family, coming from police itself. And I'm quite sure that at some stage, the family must have also agreed, the girl's family must have also agreed. The boy was showing honorable intention of marrying. He had actually got the marriage registered. He had not abandoned the girl. All those factors must have weighed with the judges, even though this is not part of the judgment. So what we're learning in this case is not only that what amounts to taking, because that's the education the judgment does give us. But there's a lot more to learn about how the law functions in actual practice. It is not only the technical language of the law always which weighs with the judges. A lot of other considerations also weigh with the judges. And in this case, we do know the fact that he showed honorable intention. Everything else being the same. She called up, he came, he took her to a hotel, spent the 3 nights there with her, and then abandoned her. And whatever happens after he has taken her away, that is of no relevance in determining kidnapping or not. But his dishonorable conduct would have weighed with the judge. They said, no, 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 not permitted. He has taken her away. You cannot allow a girl without the consent of the parent to accompany you. The reasoning is likely to have come the other way around. Satyam has a question.
Ma'am, but the judges have tried to substantiate this fact by saying that the purpose of Section 361 is not only to protect the rights of the guardian, it's also to it's only to protect the rights of children or people of unsound mind.
It
So
is to
can we not say
protect
that?
children. It is to protect children.
Yeah. So if the
Yeah.
judges feel that the person is reasonable enough and they can exercise autonomy, then I don't think they have crossed any line
No,
in
Satyam, that's the
determining
whole
this.
issue. Today in POCSO, we have 40% of these sexual offenses under POCSO, which are consensual sex among adolescents. And the boys are routinely, and boys or the young men, no, suppose the boy is above 18, he goes to prison, adult prison for 7 years minimum. And therefore, judges are at a quandary. So the legislation, neither this legislation gives you any discretion. 361 doesn't give you that if people on the verge of majority, you will decide whether they were capable of taking decision or not. So the whole hypothetical questions arising from here, I'm not saying the judges have done anything wrong. That's not my point. The point we are learning as a lawyer is that it is not always the technical interpretation of the law that the judges adopt. Once they are sure of what is just in a situation, they might have felt it is just not to send this man to prison. Then they will have to work their way through their reasoning to justify their decision that this man should not be sent to prison. And what was the best route for them to do is not to talk about enticing at all. But the moment they talked about enticing, they could not have let this person go. But by keeping silent on enticing, not analyzing the facts which were suggesting a prior agreement to marry, and in all cases before this, if the man had made a promise of marriage, that has been seen even after this. A promise of marriage has been seen as sufficient enticement, sufficient luring of the girls to leave their homes. So even though the man may have played no role in the actual leaving of the house by the girl, the fact that they made a promise because of which they left their house has been seen as enticement by the man. But in this case, that if they had opened up that conversation, they would have to convict, because the facts are clearly suggesting there was a prior meeting of mind between the two that they will get married. And the man has upheld his, is holding on to his promise. The same way there's it's completely uncomparable. But when the judge says, oh, you had promised marriage, will you still marry her, the rapist? But that's not the scenario here. It's not a question of rape. And although interestingly, at this in 1960, this girl, why was this man not charged for rape? She was a girl of less than 18. Because
The
at
age
that
was 15 or 16 at that time.
Yes, ma'am.
16. So she could not leave the parents' house without their permission, but she could have sex without their permission. Look at these double standards. How is it justified in law that a girl who is seen not as mature enough to leave her parents' house is seen mature enough to give permission to have sex? The man is not liable for rape. They've spent nights together. So if today the same thing would have happened, Varadarajan would have been charged with both kidnapping and murder and rape. But in those days, because you had this double standard of the law, which says a girl of 16 above can have sex with her consent without making the man liable, but she can't run away with him. She runs away with him, then he's charged with kidnapping. In this case, of course, the judges said no kidnapping. But it was very much possible if they had taken the examination of the concept of enticement in this case, the man would have been held liable for kidnapping but not rape, because of the two different ages given in two different sections in the IPC. Now, what is the rationale? What is the rational explanation to say why a girl of 16 was found capable of giving consent to sex but not leave her parents' house? Do we find anything wrong about these two laws, picking up different age groups for girls?
Ma'am, I think this is wrong, but at the same time, during that time, the institution of marriage was something that was supposed to be entered by women by the age of 16, and I feel that is why this law
No.
did have
Ayush,
the limit
the age of marriage was in 1960, I think it was 15, and a girl, a married woman after the age of 15 could not say no to her husband, and a girl of 16, so between 15 to 16, an unmarried girl, even if she consented to have extramarital sex, the man would be liable for rape. But if the married woman of 15 to 16 objected to, even though objected to, and she was raped by the husband, he was not liable. From the age of 16, if she consented, an unmarried girl, if she consented from the age of 16 onwards, the man was not liable for rape, but if he ran away with her, he was liable for kidnapping. So you could have sex with the kids, but not run away with them. Very clearly, double standards of law relating to sexuality of men and women. This whole area of rape and marital rape and the age of consent, etc., is all reflective of how does the law constructs male sexuality. Male sexuality, there are three myths about male sexuality. One, it is said it is irrepressible, uncontrollable, and thirdly, it is insatiable. So when we look at this difference, we do believe that the girls are not capable, mentally mature enough to decide whether they want to live with somebody else for the rest of their life.
What was the third one?
Saurabh?
What was the third one?
Insatiable. They can never be satisfied, not enough sex, never. They can never control once the urge takes over, and they cannot, uncontrollable, insatiable, irrepressible. They cannot repress their urge once it happens. So they have this,
No, what do you mean
they
by
want to have,
repressible?
sorry?
What do you mean by repressible?
Irrepressible. It cannot be suppressed.
So this is
Ma'am,
No, these are the myths. I'm saying these are not the realities, but this is how men are brought up to say that men, and a lot of people believe that men want to have sex all the time, anytime, all the time. The second one is that, so this is irrepressible, that this is something which they do not have control. The urge to have sex with the men is always there. The second one is that once the urge becomes visible to them, they cannot control it. They must have sex at that point of time. And they are never satisfied with any amount of sex they have. Their sexual urges are never satisfied. So these are the three thoughts about male sexuality, because of which rape has been justified for a long time. There are cases where the judges have said, midnight, the lust took over the young boys, and they raped this girl, gang rape, one after the other. So this whole conception about male sexuality meant that you have to make more women available. Prostitution, we know, is not an offense in India. And the Law Commission report does say that these are necessary social evils. Because you have to have, the men are not satisfied with having just one wife. Therefore, having other women available to them So if a married man has sex outside the marriage, it was not punishable. It was only if a man had sex with a married woman that was punishable as adultery. So lot of legitimate spheres were made available to men to have sex without attracting penal liability. And this contrast between the age of consent for kidnapping and age of consent for marriage was also another reflection of saying that you cannot know if a man is having sex with somebody who's little reasonably old, you cannot penalize the man. But then suddenly you turn around and say, no, she's not old enough to decide her future for the rest of her life. Miss having sex with a man is also deciding something for the future for her life. So there were very clearly this double standard which are reflected in the fact that Varadarajan was not charged with rape, only for kidnapping, and then acquitted for reasons other than the language of the law. The language of the law would have certainly pinned down, if we were to look at strict application of 361 in case of Varadarajan, there was no way Varadarajan could not have been punished. But because of these other factors, what we call as the sense of justice of the judge has found reasoning and has not taken the line of reasoning which would have trapped him into convicting. So this is what we're learning, is not that whether this judgment is right or wrong. What we're learning is that what are the manner in which you can present your case and convince the judge to actually acquit your client even though the ingredients are actually satisfied. So Varadarajan in that sense is a great learning, that what may be the range of factors, because there's no this is an innocent victim. This accused is an innocent victim. He was only, he was in love, he wanted to get married, there's nothing wrong about getting married, and he did do everything in his power at that point of time. He could not have married because the girl was underage. So he was not even violating that law, saying, okay, let's go to the Arya Samaj and get married. He has gone through the proper channel where they will have to wait till she becomes 18. They've got their marriage registered. He's already taken those gundus, etc., which is indicating his pious desire to marry this girl. So all that, his conduct during the event itself has weighed with the judges to say it's not written there. It's not in black and white. These are all our inference from what is not written in the judgment and from the facts we know outside the judgment. You've all heard of media trial. That media runs its parallel trial. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. So in the Jessica Lal, it was the media which actually reopened the whole case. So there may be a good journalism or otherwise, but somewhere the whole point is that we need to know, Sushant Rajput is another one which is now continuing saga, and this has opened up so many floodgates because of the media continuous focus on all that. So certainly there are forces beyond the language of the law which also play a part. And as a lawyer, you should know how to make your persuasive story. This is something you will come back to again when you do the other compulsory paper on mock trial, moot court, etc. We'll come back to this whole aspect of creating your most persuasive story. So in this, the most persuasive story by the defense will be that, look, the girl is on the verge of majority. She's a college-going girl. So this is not all the judges which have come. No, it is not all that the judges would have thought on their own. These are the suggestions which the defense counsel must have put forward. And the judges have bought into that argument, that the girl is on the verge of majority. She did everything on her own. The judge, neither the prosecution must have, for whether because of the fact that this was all honorable according to them also. So it's not a question of an individual bias, but the understanding of the situation. So prosecution has also not pressed on the facts which I just read, which are clearly indicative of enticement. So neither the prosecution has emphasized, and certainly it is not good for the defense to emphasize on enticing, to give answer to enticing. So they have just brushed it aside, saying that there is no prior conversation of any promise of marriage. But the conduct at the time when she left the house is clearly indicative of a prior meeting of mind. But that's not something which has been emphasized upon. And this is what we say, when you do moot court, etc., this is a good example of that which facts to highlight for your story. If I was a defense counsel, I was a prosecution counsel, I will certainly highlight the part which I read in saying that, no, look what has happened from the point she met this boy. The boy has come all prepared to get married. So there is a friend, they go to the temple, they do the job, they do everything. So this could not have been decided, this whole huge course of action could not have been decided on the spur of the moment. And therefore, I will, as a prosecution, harp on that aspect to say there was enticement in this case, even if there was no taking. I would have emphasized on the fact that no, the girl could not have left the lawful guardianship. But that is that we are not even concerned about, because the point we're taking is that the offense is not made out, therefore we need not deal with other questions. If I'm a defense counsel, I will certainly deal with the matter as has been dealt in this case. Girl capable of taking a decision, educated girl, city girl, going about, now she knows the thing, she took the initiative, putting all the blame on her and keeping my client safe from that. So this is how you can build up alternate stories to convince the judge. And then, of course, the stories have to be proved. So this is the story which the prosecution itself has mentioned, that this is what they did on that aspect. And the defense certainly would not harp on the fact of what happened after the girl met her. What they have harped on is what happened prior to that. There's no evidence that there was any conversation about marriage between the two of them. So this is how you learn to build arguments using facts which are going in your favor without denying the other. So it is not that the other side has not mentioned their facts. The facts are there, but which facts are favorable to you, depending on which side you are, you will focus on the analysis, interpretation, inference from those facts. Compared to this one, we have the second case, Vadagamma. In Vadagamma, the whole conversation is on enticing. And the charge is also of rape, because the girl was barely 13 years of age. So the fact that she was infatuated to this rich businessman, and therefore she had consensuous sex with him, is of no use. So what did the judges say? What happened in Vadagamma? Who is going to tell the facts apart from the four who have already spoken? Ayushi, Saurabh, Neha, Rishikesh, Suraj Kumar, Sakshiraj, Balram Singh, anyone? What are the facts in Vadagamma? Do we have anyone?
Ma'am,
Then I was just hoping that somebody else will present. If no one, then of course you tell. It's becoming really too monotonous for me. But let it be. I cannot fight with a class which doesn't want to do anything. Satyam, you have your hand up.
Yes, ma'am. So do you want me to go with the facts first or the verdict that
Yeah,
passed?
Vadagamma facts.
So, ma'am, there's this girl, Mohini, who lives with her parents. And because of certain situation, they come to live in a place where the neighbor is a owner of some factory. So it's a businessman, a very rich, influential person. And then one day so we have one instance where the owner gives some expensive, lavish gift to the girl when he is visiting their house. So that has been used later to prove enticement. And then one day this Vadagamma, he takes the parents of the girl, and I think two other people to a site where he's planning to set up a factory.
His own daughter also.
Yeah, his own daughter as well. Uh, the prosecution says that he promised that the girl's father would be allocated the position of the manager of this newly constructed venture, which also shows that he was trying to assert his influence and entice the girl later by the prosecution.
He was wooing the parents also.
Yeah, he was wooing the parents as well. And then we see how Vadgama is, he mixes up with the family. He takes them to vacations, and we find instances. So the first instance is where when they're staying at a hotel in Mumbai. So there, I think it was the first instance when Mohini's mother comes to know about that there's something illicit might be going on between Vadgama and her daughter, and she does not say anything to anyone at that time. But after coming back, she informs the girl's father, and she also writes to Vadgama, if I'm not wrong, s- very respectfully asking him to not get involved into something with her daughter. Then we see. So there are many more instances where the family meets goes out on excursions, and there are instances where the prosecution claims that the two got into consensual relationships, and
Yeah, but when confronted by the parents, he goes to the temple and vows.
yeah, he
That,
goes
no,
to
she's like my daughter. She's like my daughter's age. There's nothing between us.
yes. This is also an instance where so he keeps his hand on his daughter as well as on Mohini and claims that she's like my daughter. Then finally we see that in December, Mohini writes to Mr. Vadgama saying
No,
that
before
she
that, no. Before that, Mohini goes for a outing with the
School.
school.
yes.
This man follows her up there also. And after that, the mother started accompanying her to the school every day, not letting
yes.
her out of her sight.
There's also an instance where he gives some expensive gift, a waistband, silver waistband, and a
And
skirt
a
by
Parker pen, and a
and a
Parker pen.
Parker pen. I don't know why this Parker pen has been mentioned thrice.
Look at the year which it was. When I was in school, Parker pen was completely out of our reach. Parker pen has to
Children are restricted
had
to
a
pens.
golden tip with the nib. So Parker pen was the pen.
Okay, ma'am. So
Today I find so many students giving me a Parker pen and they don't realize what importance of the Parker pen was.
and then in December, Mohini writes to Mr. Vadgama saying that she is facing cruelty and harassment by her parents at her home, and she wants to leave her home. So he
No,
does
but
not.
that's a letter she wrote at Vadgama's office.
No, that happens when she actually goes to his office. I think a conversation took place between them in December as well. Uh, a private conversation between them. I'll just have a look and tell.
Yeah, I don't think so. Anyone who will confirm or deny? But there are two letters she wrote at that point of time, which he got her to write and posted.
That was in later, I think, ma'am. That is the last.
Yeah, when she left
Actually, he
so
made
the
her
mother that day on the date of the event, the mother was accompanying her to school. Midway, mother said, "Okay, now go to the school. Rest of the way, I'm going to the bank." So instead of going to school, she goes to Vadgama's office. And there, Vadgama gives him some money. I think where there's an entry to that money as well in the register. And she writes letters from there, one addressed to the police or something, and whereby she has been taunted, etc. She wants to run away, and she has run away, something to that effect, and taken money from there. So therefore, he was creating a justification that people would have seen her to come to the office. So he made
Before that,
he was creating all this evidence. Yes, Ayushi.
before that also she wrote a letter to him.
Uh-huh.
It's on second page. Before that, before writing those three letters, she wrote a letter to him also, telling him that she was harassed at home.
Okay, which date is
Ma'am,
that?
on page 33.
It's on page 133 on
Okay.
September 26th, when she went with her girlfriends out for the camp.
Mhm,
After
mhm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
she wrote him letters telling him that complaining of ill treatment by her parents and expressing her desire to leave her parents' house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now
Ma'am,
let
so
me
what
just.
is mentioned here is that nothing particular seems to have happened in months of November and December 1965. However,
Mhm.
according to the appellant, during these 2 months, Mohini had written letters to him complaining of ill treatment by her parents and expressing her desire to leave her parents' house. So this is Vadgama's story that he's telling. So we are not
Yeah,
really
but I
sure
don't
if
think
it exists or
I
not.
don't think we got any documentation of that. There's a defense he has raised, but it is not that he has shown any papers of that kind.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just confirm and tell you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, so all these facts are being used by the defense to say, well, she was unhappy. She left. She came on her own. I only tried to assist her. Okay. Then after that, what happened? After she went to the house, to his house, then what did he do?
Ma'am, first of all, he kept her in his dicky of the car. Then, like transporting her to his own house. When he took her to her own bungalow, and he got the news that police were searching for him. First of all, he confined her to his place, and later promised that he will give her food. And later, when he got threat of police, he told that there are two ways: one to enter the basement or something, and second to exit to the main road. And told her to go to the main road and take the path of the main road and go and wait at a particular place. So that is what happened in this case.
So she's been found. I know that there was unfinished food in Vadgama's garage, and the girl was found some distance away from there. So in these circumstances, what are the legal ingredients of 361 which are involved? As I say, what is the micro issue? Macro issue is whether he was liable for kidnapping or not. The micro issue, which of the ingredient is in question? What are the ingredients which are satisfied? And nobody is challenging that. Girl is a minor, satisfied? Nobody's challenged that, no, because there will be cases in kidnapping cases where the girl runs away and she will say, I am above 18. And girl's parent will say, no, she is below 18. So that may be the micro question, that whether the girl was above 18 or below 18. In this case, there is no dispute that the girl was a minor. What is also not in dispute? The girl left the house without the knowledge or consent of the parents. She was in the lawful guardianship also. Then what is left to be determined? Whether Vadgamma can be said to have taken or enticed her away. So in this case, what do you think? Is it taken, enticing, or both? Or neither?
Ma'am, it's both. First of all, for enticing, he took her to trips and in his own car, and took her to various places. And as he was rich, like giving her a pomp and show of all the riches he can provide to her, gave her gifts occasionally, gave her promises that when she told that my parents are harassing me and all that, that yeah, he will keep her in his custody and all that. He will take care of her, giving her big words. So yeah, enticing. He completely enticed her, and the way he took her, he confined her to his basement or something. He took her in his car's dicky and confined her to a particular place and used her as a sex object. So it's also taken. So yeah, it falls under both. He has
No, if
enticed her
suppose, no, at this point of time, we do not know whether they had sex or not. And even if they had, whether she was still below 13, below 16 or not. That's where the whole question of rape charge has been there. that subsequently the girl had become above the cutoff age, but earlier she wasn't. But because the prosecution had not pressed the charge of rape, therefore the judges said we cannot now open that question. But in this scenario, the question I'm asking Nirupam is that if suppose there had no sex at that point of time, from the point she went to the office and by the time she was recovered by the police, whether that fact will have any impact on taking?
Yes, ma'am. Confining her to a particular place and the way he took her in his dicky of the car
No,
completely justifies that.
confining, the word confining suggests, and we have to be careful with the choice of the words. Confining would seem like that it was against her wish, but kind of hiding her is a more appropriate word, that she was hiding her, first in the dicky, then in her house. So therefore, he was hiding her presence, and the fact that he was carrying her around in his own car, he kept her in his own house, was suggesting that he was also responsible for taking, even though the girl, when she left the mother's uh, uh, side, she had walked on her own to the office. So whether the fact that she came on her own, walked to his office on her own, does that mean that he cannot be held to have taken? Of course, it is not relevant. As long as one of the two is there, that is sufficient for conviction. But I agree with Nirupam on this one, that I think that there are both things are there. The first leaving of the mother's side, instead of going to school, to his house or to his office, was motivated by the enticement. His lavish lifestyle, his pampering the girl, he's taking her around different places, and sex certainly is another attraction at that age. So all those activities were enticing the girl, and therefore when she left, the leaving was not on her of her own free will. And subsequent actions, certainly he was taking her around places, hiding her presence from anyone. So certainly it's a case of both. There was enticement as well as taking. In this case, there's no conversation. Remember, one the girl is of course very young, starting at 13, going up to 15, and 15 to 16. So, and it lasted for some time. The whole thing lasted for some time. But the judges, they think that no, it was kind of too young. Now look at the, again, characterization of the accused person. They've given all these details that he is swearing that she's like my daughter. So certainly the age difference between the two would have also weighed. So these are certainly a case where the facts, detailed facts have been brought on record to suggest that how he has influenced the girl's choice. It is not denying the girl must have been infatuated by him. She might be calling it at love as well. But whether when you are dealing with such a young, impressionable adolescent child, your actions can have a different meaning. And if you are actually becoming sexually involved with the girl, clearly you are enticing the girl to leave her house. So the mere fact that the girl left the house on her own is of no consequence. What Gamma is liable for kidnapping and abduction, kidnapping from the lawful guardianship. Any other questions or thing that you want to talk about in Vadgamma?
Ma'am, does
yes,
law?
ma'am.
Okay.
Who was asking?
Ma'am, I was
Satyam or
asking
Nirupam?
that. Ma'am, Nirupam right now.
Yes,
Satyam has
Nirupam.
stopped. Yeah, and so why isn't he like it was written in a paragraph that first he was acquitted for 1.5 years of rigorous imprisonment, and later he was dismissed of that charge due to because that was not proved beyond reasonable doubt. What is that supposed to be?
Rape ka na? Which para are you talking about?
Ma'am, not the rape part. It was like he was given 1.5 years of rigorous imprisonment.
No, tell me, where are you reading? Where are you reading?
It was page 169 for me, first para, I guess.
So how does it start?
Ma'am, 1 second.
Now, the trial court, in exhaustive judgment, after considering the case from the all relevant aspects, came to the conclusion that Mohini was born on September 18, 1951. And then the medical evidence led in the case also showed that she was above 14 but below the age of 17 during the relevant period. She was accordingly held to be a minor on the date of the incident. If therefore the appellant had sexual intercourse with her even with her consent, he would be guilty of rape. Mohini was believed by the trial court when she stated that the appellant had sexual intercourse with her at the earliest possible opportunity, as this was corroborated by the medical evidence. The trial court found no reason for her to stake her whole life by making false statement that her chastity, nor for her parents to encourage or induce her to come out with a false story, there being no enmity between the appellant and the family of Mohini with respect to any matter which would induce them to charge him falsely. No doubt in my mind. The present case inducement given by appellant operated on Mohini's mind. The appellant was accordingly held guilty under section 366 and 376 IPC. Under section 366, sentenced to RI for 18 months, 376 for 2 years, and also to fine and into false substantive imprisonment and the appellant on appeal. This is the para. On appeal, the High Court also considered the matter at great length, and in very exhaustive judgment, appellant's conviction of 376 was set aside, and he was acquitted of that offence. The acquittal was ordered because the charge being only for sexual intercourse in 1967, the evidence from Mohini in support of the offence was not accepted as safe and free from all reasonable doubt. In the absence of independent corroboration, in adopting this approach, High Court seems to have been somewhat over-indulgent and unduly favourable to the appellant under 376, but there being no appeal, we cannot say anything more. The appellant's conviction under 367 was upheld. High Court felt the story of Mohini incident questioning. I'm not too sure where I'm supposed to read.
Ma'am, exactly that paragraph in which it is written section 376 on appeal by the appellant. The High Court also considered the matter at great length, and in a very exhaustive judgment, the appellant's conviction under section 376 was set aside as he was acquitted of that offence. This acquittal was ordered because the charge being only for sexual intercourse on the night of January 16th.
Yeah, because when the police made the charge, they did not mention all the incidences of sexual intercourse. They mentioned only one. And on that particular night, they said the only evidence we have is her statement, and her statement is not reliable. Of course, today the situation has changed. When it says the evidence in support of the offence was not accepted as safe in the absence of independent corroboration. Now, the law has been very clear that you do not require independent corroboration of the statement of the girl if her statement is reliable. So this part that victims' statements need to be corroborated is no more a good law. So in the year when it was decided, they were asking for independent corroboration. Independent corroboration would mean there should be maybe medical reports saying there were marks of physical injury. There might be there might be somebody to whom she immediately after the event reported the offence. So any of that could have been seen as a corroboration. But today, if the evidence of the victim herself is reliable, it is accepted and sufficient proof for conviction of the offender. So in this case, because only one instance was made for the charge of intercourse, and for certain reasoning today will not hold good. The High Court saying that because there is no corroboration, therefore we will not hold the conviction. That will not happen. It could have been challenged even and then, but because the state did not challenge that acquittal. Therefore, the court now cannot say, oh, we want to charge him for that as well.
Ma'am, when is a statement reliable, and why was not her statement reliable in this case? Because she was the one who was sexually exploited.
What the judge has said here is, was not safe and free from all reasonable doubt in the absence of independent corroboration. So the judge, High Court at that point of time, was looking for independent corroboration, which wasn't found. So they were saying that only looking at her statement, we are not going to convict. And this is the Supreme Court is already criticizing that they were over liberal in doing this.
Ma'am, you switch off your.
Yeah, I was talking to my brother in the room. I didn't want you to hear that conversation.
Sorry, ma'am.
Not at all. Yeah, so any more questions on this one?
Ma'am, there's a question in the chat box about enticement. Can you just check?
Okay. Let's just take an example where I treat my sister's kid by providing comforts and gifts to the kid because I have no kid of mine. The kid gets attached to me. So if my cousin is harassing and beating the kid, and in such case the kid seeks shelter and protection at my home, have I kidnapped the kid on the account of previously treating the kid nicely because I am unable to conceive? Are you enticing the kid, or you are just in love with the kid?
I'm very fond of kid.
No, you're very fond of kid is one right, but no, because when all this comes in, that because I'm not able to conceive myself, therefore I am fond of the kid, and then the child comes over, then you are by that narration. Now I would want to argue that you are actually enticing the child. You are hoping that the child will come to you, because your rationale is not that this is my child's irrespective of whether you have grown children or not, you would have still loved him. So as a prosecution, I would harp on that aspect. But in my defense, certainly I'm saying, no, I will not narrate, I will not narrate the incident in these words. Because these words are suggestive that you were enticing the child, no boy or girl. So therefore, it will also ordinarily, it may happen the other way around also. No? Just like that, we do know that in schools, some students are very fond of one teacher, and the teacher is really good. So one of the children, because of the family harassment, etc., leaves her house and comes to the teacher's house. The teacher keeps the child. Whether so slight change in the sakana that you have mentioned, whether the teacher has enticed. What do you think? The teacher is generally nice to all the children. All the children would like to.
Didn't entice, I think.
Sorry?
He did not entice, I think, ma'am.
Yeah, she was not enticing. She was just being good.
After that, if he keep the children in his house, then it will be culpable in any other offenses under crime.
No, because so, my sister was separated at that time. And my niece, who was adult at that point of time, she was, they were children when my sister separated. And then the girl became adult. The father wanted to marry her to someone else. She wanted to marry somebody else. So she ran away from the father's house and came to our house. To our house, she was adult. She was my sister's daughter. She came to my sister, to her mother. We straight away went to the police station to lodge this information that I am adult, I am on my free will, I am here, and we didn't have a problem. But because we knew there was a possibility of the father saying, oh, child enticement, kidnapping and all. So whenever that does happen, it is important for you to report the matter. Once you do that, then your intentions are clear. That you are not enticing, you have not enticed the child. You were just good to that child. But if your motivation is clear, you're saying, okay, ना कहीं उसको हमको पट्टी भी पढ़ाते हैं साथ में, खाना भी देते हैं, यहाँ ही रह जाओ तुम, वहां क्यों रहते हो, तुम्हें मारती है, कभी ऐसा बोल दिया तो गए काम से, then it of course it's all enticing. But the other instances also we gave the other day, that the film company says, I'll give you a role, you're such a good actor, you're such a good dancer, you're a good singer, so I'll give you something. And this is, they are genuinely meaning it. The child leaves home because the parents are not ready to send him. तुम पढ़ाई खत्म करो, please अपने पढ़ना, तुम fame में चले जाओगे. That's the reason parents have not sending their children to something which will give them fame. Sometimes they're afraid that maybe this person is cheating. So whether cheating or not, the fact that you gave that promise to the child that you will give him that role, you will give him that album, is enticement. So in this case also, if it is purely that you were being nice, and because he was so unhappy at home, he has come to your house, you're not enticed him. Your purpose of giving him good treatment was not to make him leave his house. But if that was your intention, if that was your rationale for being good to him, then you're in trouble. No, but in this case, it was not only that he had taken her at that point or not taken. His prior conduct is indicated that he was enticing. He was luring the girl. He was giving her dreams, having a lush life with him. So it is not only that in that particular moment alone which is determining whether he was enticing or not. In this case, his conduct at that point of time itself, if he had reported, maybe if he had said that no, even if it was enticing, he was actually not expecting that he'll happen, but he didn't do any of that. So if suppose in this case, the fact that he was having sex with her, he was giving her presents, and there was no relationship, there was no age parity between the two, all that are indicative. The older man was actually luring the young girl, young impressionable mind. And that is where the age of the person, if she was, suppose she was just close to 18, maybe judges would have still said that no, because there are younger women who fall in love with older men as well. But this younger woman should be of an age where she can have the capacity to know that. So when there are younger children involved, the judges do not then say, oh, this child could have also thought. So sometimes it may happen that somebody is really just genuinely very fond of the child, and the child takes it to a sexual level. So those misunderstandings may happen, but then the adult has to behave in a different manner. Even if he gets to know that this child is getting infatuated with, suppose genuinely assuming that he had looked at this girl only as a daughter and there was no sex between them. The moment the sex happened, then there was certainly not a daughter-father relationship. So he's telling a lie to everybody that then he's saying, I've developed certain feelings. So anyway, so in this case, there was too many negatives to do away with enticement in this case. That's what
Can you explain what enticement actually means? I mean, in this case, you were saying that even affection towards others kid is also enticement. So what really is enticement?
No. And look, what are the facts is given is, for example, A has filed, okay, this is another one. Let's go to the first one. Vanshika has written, let's just take an example where I treat my sister's kid by providing comforts and gifts to the kid because I have no kid of my own. So this is very telling. The kid gets attached to me. So if my cousin is harassing and beating the kid, and in such case the kid seeks shelter and protection at my home, have I kidnapped the kid on the account of previously treating the kid nicely because I am unable to conceive? So this is contextually saying that the motivation is coming from the fact that I am childless and therefore I am taking that child as my own. So you actually are wanting to take that person's child. So that's slightly different. Let's look at there's a second example also somebody else given. I had another question, not related to a particular case. A has filed a case against B accusing him for kidnapping, but with due course of the investigation, we get to know that there was rape also involved. But A hasn't filed a case for rape. Can A be still liable? We have this Schedule 1 in CRPC, which tells us what is the type of case, and the one category there is whether the offense is cognizable or non-cognizable. It's only in non-cognizable cases that a complaint needs to be filed. In all cognizable cases, even if nobody reports, but it gets to the knowledge of the court or the police, they can file their own FIR. The scenario in this case is not that the charge was not made. This problem in this case is that because the High Court acquitted him of the charge of rape and the state did not appeal against that, then the Supreme Court on its own cannot take that factor in view. Then they cannot say now because we have found there were more instances than one and High Court should have done this, such and such court should have done this. The charge was there, they've been acquitted, the state has not appealed, Supreme Court cannot take. But in other cases, when during, suppose for example, now we have in POCSO, we have an obligation that, just one second. Doctor, no, suppose a girl of 17 years of age goes to the doctor and says, I want to check, I want a test done whether I'm pregnant or not. The doctor is obligated to inform the police that this girl is sexually active, which means that somebody is committing a sexual offense against her. So there might be situations where he's not, and this will be a charge of rape. The girl has just come to find out, is she pregnant? Which means she's sexually active. Children below the age of 18 are not permitted to. So anyone who is having sex with an underage girl or a boy is liable for the offense of rape. The terminology is different, penetrative sexual assault, but that's what will happen. So do we have others? So in this case, before the FIR was lost. Yeah. So yeah, this is also that because there were too many telling categories there. That he was not merely being a friend to her or whether he didn't want to. So all that is this is very clear that her actions were the result of his actions, which were categorically enticing the girl. Nirupam was asking what is the word. Nirupam, anyone would want to check the dictionary meaning of word enticing? If I tell my neighbor's daughter, look, here I've got chocolates, come to me. And she comes to me. No sex, nothing involved. I'm just luring her. I show her a we just a lot of children, huh? Children in somebody's lap. And I show them. Just 1 second. I need to find out who's in the gate.
The definition says to provoke someone to do something through often false or exaggerated promises or persuasion.
Yes, you were reading the enticing definition, dictionary meaning?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, it says to provoke someone to do something through often false or exaggerated promises or persuasion.
Suppose किसी गोद में बच्चा होता है तो हम दिखाते हैं टॉफी दिखाते हैं, उसको कुछ खिलौना दिखाते हैं, आ जा मेरे पास आ जा, ऐसे करते हैं ना, दैट्स एंटाइसिंग. बच्चे को लालच देके कह दे मेरे पास आ जाओ, फिर भी मेक टू डू somebody like that, this is enticing. Then, when the child puts forward his hand to come to my lap, he has been enticed by my action, by my showing of the thing or by promising or by giving him something. उसको दिया टॉफी दिया, बोला चलो और बाजार चलते हैं, चलो घूमने चलते हैं, बच्चे आ जाते हैं. It's all enticing. So when I say कि चलो बाजार जाते हैं टॉफी लेके आते हैं, no, I tell my cousin's daughter, small child, she comes with me, I'm enticed. But certainly it's not an offense because I'm not taking the child out of the keeping of the lawful guardian. So enticing is just a component. Enticing is not the offense. Offense is with what purpose, intention, consequence you are enticing the person to leave or to take the child out of the lawful guardianship. Suppose
like in this case,
yeah,
you are saying that you are taking the child of your sister, and if you have not taken the permission of her mother or father and have taken her to bazaar, even if
express
you
or
did not have
implied,
any mal,
Nirupam, express or implied. Do I have my sister's implied permission to take the child to the shop?
she just
Suppose
doesn't.
we are, no, suppose we are estranged, we are fighting court battles. Then I take this child on that promise so that my sister will sign some compromise document. Certainly, kidnapping is a contextual category. No, there's not one fact alone. It's a contextual question. I have to still look at. Sorry about these disturbances. So it's we also read it, no, the whether it's not one fact alone, whether you're enticed. What is the intention? Is the intention to keep the child, take the child out of the lawful guardianship, keeping of the lawful guardianship? If that's not so, बच्चों को लेके जाते हैं, चलो हम, no, suppose the child has been left at my house and I'm going to the market in the evening. लेके मैं बच्चों को, माँ को, बहन को फोन करके नहीं पूछा ले जाऊं कि नहीं ले जाऊं. Implied consent. Unless there are facts to suggest she could not have allowed me to take it and I still do it, then of course it will be different. But in relationships, depending on what is the relationship and what is the purpose for which you are taking the child, certainly if I take this child to a child to see an adult movie, that's not something that will be an implied consent. Children are not supposed to watch adult movies. I take her to a discotheque without the mother's permission, and it cannot be implied that no, she was permitted to. In Blacklear's Law Dictionary, entice means to lure or to induce, to wrongfully solicit a person to do something. In law, we have got to know when we use two kinds of dictionaries, and one is the general dictionary, the other is the legal dictionary. There will be lots of phrases and words we use in law which you will not find in ordinary dictionary. So you will see here referring to Blackstone Law Dictionary. So certainly we have to be aware. Where suppose example, you can check up any ordinary dictionary. Now you people don't even consult ordinary dictionaries. You just do Google all the dictionaries online. Previously, all my standard dictionaries, Webster's and Collins and all that, they would not have words like plaintiff, but they will be found in law dictionaries. So this is additional knowledge for you because Google has brought it on record here, that there are specific dictionaries which are dealing with legal phrases, words. There's something called words and phrases is another dictionary, then Black's Law Dictionary. These are all, it's not Blackstone, I think, Yoga, it is Black's Law Dictionary. So this is the most famous category. So there will be certain dictionaries and these are useful to use. But again, dictionaries are not binding in nature. They are
You are right.
persuasive.
It's Black's Law Dictionary.
Yeah, actually Black's Law Dictionary, not Black's.
Sorry.
So because that's the most famous law dictionary, which will have all the legal words. When you look at the first two words, entice means to lure or induce to wrongfully solicit a person to do something. Enticement can be not necessarily, in my understanding, not only limited to wrongful activities as well. You may be enticed by lots of things, but there's nothing illegal about it. As an adult, you can also be enticed by seeing somebody's wealth and you are falling for that person. So that will not be an offense if, and lots of people do flaunt their riches and wealth and magnanimity, etc. But the technical meaning is to lure. Lure is the most safe word to use, that if you are luring a person to do something, and then if it is done for this purpose, for the purpose of kidnapping, to take the child out of the keeping of the lawful guardian, then it is the offense that we are talking about. Okay, now tell me, and this is a tricky one question. A girl and a boy, the girl was minor, they were in love, they went out to the temple, Arya Samaj, performed their marriage. Vidhivat, completely legally they were married. And remember, child marriage is not an invalid marriage, it's a valid marriage. After the wedding that day, both returned to their parents' homes. And in the evening, the father gets to know, girl's father gets to know that she got married today in the temple. Can he file a charge of kidnapping on the boy who was gone back to his parents' place? The girl is at her parents' place and the boy is at his parents' place. The boy is a major. Can the father of the girl file a case of kidnapping?
Yes, ma'am. Because
Who said?
You can.
Ayush.
Why, Nirupam?
Because in this case, when he took the child for the marriage purpose, then he at that very moment he took her out of the parameters of her legal guardians, and
Suppose the girl went her
did a
own. Suppose the girl went on her own to the marriage venue.
Ma'am, still it doesn't count because she's a minor. Her consent doesn't matter at all.
Okay. Any other reasons, Ayush?
Ma'am, similar to what Nirupam said, that as soon as he's taken her, that would amount to kidnapping. And if it's the consideration of the consent would be something of the courts. If we look at only the statute, then that would be kidnapping, I feel.
You know, the reasoning is slightly different. The answer is correct. The answer is correct. The reasoning is slightly
Without
different.
consent of legal guardian.
Jitinder?
Ma'am, the person take that girl without the consent of legal guardian.
But where is
Because
the
she is also
where is the
minor.
keeping out? No. Where is the keeping out? The girl returned to home.
Once they're married, isn't the husband the legal guardian now?
That's the appropriate answer. That the guardianship changed with the marriage of the minor girl. On marriage, the guardian becomes the husband. So therefore, physically there is no change, but technically a change has happened in the guardianship, and that guardianship has been changed without the consent of the parents. So that's why I said it's a tricky question.
Ma'am, so now the husband can file a kidnapping charge on the father of the girl.
Same question, ma'am.
It does. So that therefore, when the minor girl marries and the parents do not allow her to go, he can file for habeas corpus. Produce the body, let the girl come to me. All these interrelated marriages, etc., these are the laws which are coming into operation. That if the marriage has taken place, then it's a valid marriage. Valid marriage, the husband has a right to have the company of the girl has a right to reside. If both of them are willing, parent got nobody to challenge that. But the parents keep on saying that, and because today the law is that it is voidable. If the girl wants to challenge it, she can do that. But if she doesn't want to challenge, it's a valid marriage. She has a right to be in her matrimonial home, and that is where when these love affairs result into the boy being sent to prison, the girl is not willing to go to her parents' place. The girl is sent to a Nari Niketan. And she says, no, I don't want to be in Nari Niketan. I want to be in my in-laws' house. In-laws are ready to take. So now these judges have started saying that, no, she's not an offender. How can she be kept in an institution? But the parents say that maybe she'll change her mind. If she goes into their house, then of course she'll never change her mind. So therefore, all this tussles at the social level keeps on happening. The legal position is clear on that. Okay, can we look at the third case, Rajaram? That's very relevant to your lives.
There is a factual contention I have in Thakurlal D. Vadkama. It's on the first page itself.
Okay.
So in the second paragraph, they describe how
I think it's so good that people are actually reading the cases and bringing out the question they have from the language. So let's take out the first page.
Yes, ma'am. So in the third paragraph, I think it is mentioned that the mother of what's her name? I forgot the girl's name.
Malini.
Yeah. So the mother, when she comes to know that the appellant has given her a Parker pen, she rebukes her and asks her to return the pen, which she does after 2-3 days.
Yeah.
And then after that, they have described that they took a Bombay trip during Christmas of 1965, in which Mohini, Malti, and the appellant were sleeping in one room.
Yeah.
And Mohini's father, Malti's father, and Harish were sleeping in a different room. So now, given the fact that her parents were not really sure about the intention of the appellant, how could they have gone to allow their daughter to sleep with the appellant in the room?
No. At that point when the Parker thing happened, it was just an expensive present. The mother said, no, return it. At that point, they were not aware of anything. And that is why, when you look at this, the room arrangement is very strange also. At Mount Abu, they stayed for one day and at Mount Abu, they stayed for one day and all of them slept in one room. At about 3 a.m., when Mohini's mother got up for going to bathroom, switched on the light, she noticed appellant was sleeping by Mohini's side with his hand on her head. Mohini's mother restrained herself, did not speak about what she had seen, because the appellant had requested her not to do so. Next morning, they went to Ambaji. The Jamnagar, Mohini's mother informed the husband what she had seen. He got annoyed and rebuked Mohini. Her mother also warned her against repetition of such conduct. Mohini apologized. And so till that point of time, this is how things were. They were not comfortable with the idea that she was sleeping next to the appellant. Appellant came to know of this feeling, told her father that Mohini was like her daughter. Appellant is stated to have actually taken Mohini's father, Rekha, and his own daughter, and Mohini to the temple, placing his hand on the hands of both the children that they were daughters. Even after this incident at the temple, the appellant once met Mohini when she was returning from her school and took her to his own bungalow in his car. There he had sex with her. It seems that Mohini's parents came to know about this incident and they rebuked Mohini. They rebuked her. Mohini's parents also started taking precaution of not sending her alone. From July 66 onwards, either maid or the mother was accompanying. The appellant is stated to have made an effort to contact Mohini. He called her at his house on Saturday. Mohini's mother, having come to know of this behavior, wrote him a letter requesting him to desist from his activities. Apparently, after this letter, there was no contact between Mohini and the appellant in Jamnagar. October 66, she went to a school camp. There he followed her there also. Nothing particular seemed to have happened in December. According to the appellant, however, during these 2 months, Mohini had written letters to him complaining. So what is the behavior that you are talking about? Because all this is before this, now when it was got confirmed, then the mother said nothing, do no more.
But ma'am, in all these instances, the appellant has not tried to share a private space with Mohini. So even when he took her for a joyride, he took 2 of her friends with her as well.
No, but that's what, that it was clearly indicating that he did not stop, even though the parents said. The parents would not expect na, कि school trip में भी वहाँ पहुँच जाएगा उनका. The parents, when they gave permission her to go for joyride, for a camp, that's a normal school activity. Children go.
Yes, ma'am. But he took her out along with 2 of her friends. So he could have taken her out her alone. Why? He didn't need to take 2 of her friends if he wanted to do something illicit with her.
No. But even taking her out, why did he take her out with the friends? Luring.
Till this point,
continuing luring, bhai. It's a continuing luring.
Remember, till this point, all we have seen is that her parents are somewhat paranoid about something existing between them. So we aren't sure that.
Paranoid, that's a fact, na? She's been having sex with this man at the age of 13, 14.
Ma'am, is this proof that they had a physical relationship?
Ma'am, can I add on something?
No. Is he denying that he had sex with her? The girl has already accepted also, na? And she has been believed by the court that they had sex.
Ma'am, may I add something?
Sure.
Ma'am, just before the Ahmedabad school incident, it's also contended that when we come to the Dattaria temple incident, it's just 5-6 lines before this. It says that the appellant once met Mohini when she was returning from a school and took her to his own bungalow in his car.
Yeah, and sex.
Yes, ma'am. So these are incidents that prove that it was a continuous relationship that was going on, and this joyride could all the more be a part of that relationship.
Yeah. You don't have to have sex every time you meet, but the fact you kept meeting despite having said everything and everything. What is his justification? Why did he go at all to meet her when she's on a camp? What is his business?
Ma'am, again, this thing comes like maybe he was just fond of her. How do we prove enticement?
Fond of a girl with whom she has been having sex.
Maybe he was fond of her in a romantic
girl.
way.
No, that's what. It's wrong. No? This is illegal by law. You cannot have sex with a young child.
But then he has not even been punished for that act. He has been punished for something else. He has not been punished for.
No, but he has done both. He has done both. Merely because he has not been punished for one doesn't mean he's not punished for the second also.
But then the question is, if it is proved that they had physical relationships when she was 13, then why isn't he being getting punished under section 375 and 6 for his?
Because the judge was favoring him for whatever reasons, whatever facts on the record might have been, because of misunderstanding the judge that he needs independent corroboration, which is not the requirement of the law, and the state did not object to that. These are technical aspects of acquittals, no?
Okay, so Vadgama being an influential person, he might have got into some sort of a conflict.
We do not know. We are not even imputing that. We are not even imputing that. We have got no information about the outside facts on this one. But on the facts of the case, the technical ground is that he was charged for the offense. The judge said there is no independent corroboration, even though the law did not require it. So therefore, ordinarily, the state should have appealed against that acquittal. Appeal did not appeal against that acquittal. Victims at that point of time had no right of appeal. Today we have a right of appeal ourselves also. We can go if the state doesn't go. So in the absence of that, because the state made an omission, he got the benefit. Whether that omission happened because somebody was not careful or whether there were money passing, we do not know. We have no idea why the state did not appeal. The state doesn't appeal in many cases.
Okay, ma'am, got it. Makes sense.
So can we talk about Rajaram very quickly? We're about to finish our time today.
Ma'am, why is it?
Yes, Ayushi.
Ma'am, why is it given that no presence of spermatozoa was found?
That is not required. For the offense of rape, spermatozoa is not required. Ejaculation is not required. Mere penetration, that the penis entered the vagina, is all that is required. And now it is not even vagina. It is no more even limited to penis. And now an object, finger, etc. Even at the moment it enters the vagina, traditionally it was penovaginal. Now we have got a lot more orifices included. So it's anal, oral, vaginal penetration. So mere penetration is sufficient for the offense of rape. We don't need to find out how much was the penetration, whether there was ejaculation or not, sperms were there or not. None of that is required.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. So coming to third case, Rajaram.
Just a very small question before we move.
Yeah, sure.
Can Supreme Court not take suo motu cognizance if they
No.
know that it has happened? Okay.
No, they cannot do that. Because in this case, this was the charge. If this offense wasn't charged, they might have perhaps done that. But once they've been acquitted, you can't again say, oh, even though the state hasn't done so, I will take cognizance. That they can't do. The technical limitations. Ayush, you still have another question?
No, ma'am.
Your hand is still up. So, okay, Rajaram. It's very relevant to your lives. Suppose a friend has become enamored with a girl. The girl's parents are not allowing her to go. They're not allowing her to meet your friend. His entry is banned. But you're still okay. You can still go and meet the girl. So carry a message from your friend to the girl saying that he'll be waiting for you at the lake at night. I'll come and accompany you. Leave at midnight tonight. Then you go to her house at midnight, take the girl with you, hand her over to the boyfriend, and they go to the village and go to the wherever they ran away. Can you be held liable for kidnapping?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
And the reason being that, first of all, she is taken out of the custody of her parents without their permission. Secondly, the objective was malified. We didn't take the person out in goodwill. It was something.
Getting married is not a bad thing. Getting married is not a bad thing. It is not for forcing her to marry. It is not to sell her into the traffic market. So if somebody leaves the house for the purpose of marrying a third person, not you, you are not the one who is marrying. You have just given the information, then allowed her to accompany you to meet her boyfriend, and after that, they are on their own. You are no more involved. So why should you be held liable for kidnapping?
Isn't the motive irrelevant, ma'am?
Ma'am,
Motive is certainly irrelevant.
Yes, ma'am. So the enticement or taking has been done on the behest of getting married to someone else or me. Does not matter. If I have enticed them to go with me, then that should count as kidnapping, I feel.
Yeah, you're done both. You're taken as well as enticed by saying that, okay, there is a boyfriend. And even though this is all truth, it is not false. Certainly, if you were to say, oh, come with me, and then you run away with her, forcibly take her and marry her, saying that, no, your boyfriend is meeting you at the other end, then no, being the villain, then of course nobody will have any doubt about it that you have kidnapped. But even if you were just working as a conduit, you are not wanting to take the girl for yourself. That doesn't matter. The section does not require you to say you wanted to, the accused person wanted to take the girl for his own interest. That's not what the section says. And it says taking a child out of the keeping of lawful guardian without the consent of the guardian is the offense of kidnapping. You've done that. Forwardness is punished because her will matters in such forwardness. What is this forwardness, Vicky? What do you mean by that? She's a willing party, so I'm not very sure what is the meaning. Assistance, okay. Assistant is punished because his act fulfills each and every requirement of section 361. The girl is underage. She's under the keeping of the lawful guardian. The consent of the guardian has not been taken. She has been enticed to leave the lawful guardianship. So you have taken or enticed her out of the keeping of the lawful guardian without the consent of the parent when the girl was below the age of 18.
Ma'am, can we say the action of the third party is proximate cause of keeping the girl from the away from the
No, so now the further question will be whether the boyfriend will be liable for kidnapping.
Yes, ma'am.
So he certainly
has taken the girl.
So he is certainly liable. And the question was that this man who is kind of only being a friend in need, he's only saying, okay, I'm a good friend of yours, I'll help you in your this major love affair. So this man was acting as a goodwill gesture for himself, for the friend he has. He doesn't have any bad intention. So all that is not relevant for the offense of kidnapping, because I think Nirupam only said that purpose is not relevant at all. Whether purpose was a good purpose or it was a bad purpose. For 361, liability under 363, the purpose is not relevant. Purpose becomes relevant when subsequent sections follow. Is that all right? Should we stop now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll give maybe 3-4 minutes more on abduction. So this definition says whoever conveys from one place to another. So let me give an example that I have an important court date today. I must appear, otherwise I'll have lots of issues. But my presence is going to affect the interest of somebody else very badly. So if we can get one adjournment today, he's very interested. So he gets somebody to make a phone call to me, saying my father has met with an accident. He's admitted into AIIMS. So please come and check him out at the AIIMS emergency. And I know my father didn't go on that site, so I believe him. I go there and realize it was a hoax call. But in the whole process, I have missed that date in the court. Have I been abducted?
Ma'am, can you reiterate it in simpler words? We didn't got the meaning of it.
हाँ, मुझे एक कोर्ट में आज अपीयरेंस थी मेरी, जाना जरूरी था. ऑपोजिशन पार्टी चाहती थी कि मैं आज कोर्ट में अपीयर ना हो, तो उन्होंने किसी से मुझे फोन कराया. मेरे फादर का अचानक से एक्सीडेंट हो गया है और वो एम्स में एडमिट है, आप तुरंत एम्स आ जाओ. तो मैंने कोर्ट को छोड़ा, मैं एम्स पहुंची. जब एम्स पहुंच गई तो पता चला कि ये होक्स झूठी कॉल थी, कुछ भी नहीं था. मेरे फादर तो ठीक ठाक थे, पर इस सारे प्रोसेस में जो मेरी कोर्ट की डेट थी वो टाइम निकल गया. उन्होंने एडजर्नमेंट ले ली कि विटनेस तो आए ही नहीं आज. So look at the definition of 362 and tell me whether
it is
abduction has taken place. Abduction है?
Yes, ma'am.
कितने लोग कहते हैं इस क्लास में? ये तो युगल तो पुराने स्टूडेंट है ना, इनको कुछ पता नहीं है ठीक से, तभी ये फिर से पढ़ रहे हैं. आप लोग बताओ कि abduction है कि नहीं है?
नहीं है मैम.
है? क्यों है? बिकॉज है ना, abduction है. मगर ये ऑफेंस ऑफ abduction नहीं है. हाँ, मगर ये ऑफेंस ऑफ abduction नहीं है, बिकॉज सिर्फ इसमें जो इम्पोर्टेंट है ना, दूसरा कुछ भी ऑफेंस हो सकता है, मगर ऑफेंस ऑफ abduction नहीं है. तो जो abduction की डेफिनेशन है और जो ऑफेंस है वो दो डिफरेंट बातें हैं. तो इसमें abduction तो हुआ है, हम लोग तब abduction लगता है कि किसी ने उसको मुंह पकड़ के बंद किया, गाड़ी में ले गया, तो वो abduction, हम ऐसा सोचते हैं दिमाग में. But the definition doesn't say so. It merely says whoever by force compels or by any deceitful means, तो इन्होंने deceitful means इस्तेमाल किया, झूठा मुझे फोन कॉल किया, induces, मुझे उन्होंने मोटिवेट किया कि मैं एक जगह से दूसरी जगह चली जाऊं. That's what the section said. It does not say कि वो उन्होंने मुझे कस्टडी में लिया, वहां जाके मुझे पकड़ लिया, ऐसा कुछ भी जरूरत नहीं है. It's only if I've been made to move from one place to another, चाहे मुझे वो चाकू से पकड़ के ले जाए और वहां जाके छोड़ दें, और चाहे वो मुझे झूठा कुछ कह करके मुझे कहीं पे बुला लें, that is abduction. But that is not itself an offense. Mischief हो सकती है, कुछ और हो सकता है, but abduction का offense नहीं है, even though the definition of abduction as in 362 is fulfilled. But if they suppose वहां पे उन्होंने बोला कि ऐसा आपका फादर बीमार है और मैं वहां गई, वहां गुंडे थे, उन्होंने मुझे वहां पकड़ लिया, they could not have caught me here but they could catch me there, then it is an offense. फिर उसमें जो purposes लिखे हैं, तो subsequent sections पढ़ेंगे हम कल, जहां पे what is the purpose of conveying will determine whether it is a punishable activity or not. Okay, we'll continue with this tomorrow. Please mark your attendance.
Thank you.
Ma'am, basically this section is read with the other section, as in case of like the section 34, that joint liability, like it is not in itself an offense, but it has to be read with other, like section 302.
No, 34 का different concept है. इसमें सिर्फ definition है, मगर offense of abduction तब होगा जब ये definition is coupled with the purpose for which this conveying is happening.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
It's not a joint liability category. It's not comparable to 34. कल पूछते हैं सौरभ. Yeah.
Little small doubts.
Okay.
Ma'am, if I send goons to kidnap one person and that people kidnap another person, then will I be liable for kidnapping?
Why do you think you will not be?
I will be, matlab, under which section? Under the same section. Like we have read
ये फोटो लिखा है, इसमें कहाँ लिखा है कि किस बंदे को आपने पकड़ना है? आपने एक बंदे को पकड़ा उसकी मर्जी के बिना, that's enough. इसमें जिसको मर्जी पकड़ा, मिस्टेक ऑफ फैक्ट थोड़ी है. मिस्टेक ऑफ लॉ, आपको तो लॉ तो पता है ना, किसी को भी जबरदस्ती उठाना गुनाह है.
But I am sending the other person.
तो आपकी तो 34 की लायबिलिटी है ना, या आपकी कॉन्स्पिरेसी की लायबिलिटी भी होगी, तो लायबिलिटी सेम आएगी, जिसने उठाया वो भी और आपकी भी. आपने कॉन्स्पायर किया ना, आपने हार किलर लिया, उसने बोला ए को मार दो, उसने बी को मार दिया, लायबिलिटी तो सेम ही रहेगी ना, आपकी भी वही रहेगी. कॉन्स्पिरेसी. ठीक है. Okay. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
You'll be taking a class tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes, not day after tomorrow.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.